Välkomna till höstsäsongen 2021 på Tryffelsvinet och vår absolut första onlineprovning för säsongen. Vi är så glada att äntligen få vara tillbaka. Det är jag som är Anna Rönngren och vid min sida har jag min fantastiska kollega Nikita Moy. Och idag har vi ju faktiskt, jag höll på att säga en hemlig gäst, det är ingen hemlig gäst. Men vi har ju vinmakaren Johan Malan med oss på länk och det känns otroligt roligt att få prata med honom idag. Det är knappt att han behöver en introduktion för att jag tror att det är få av våra producenter som har en så stor fanbase som just Simon Sich. Och jag vet att det är många av er som tittar idag. Jag har pratat med er innan och vi är såklart superglada för den här möjligheten. Men för er som kanske inte känner till Simon Sich lika väl så är det ju en familj som har funnits i Kapområdet länge. Sedan 1688 närmare bestämt. Men det var först 1952 som de började göra vin. Och då var det Johan Malans pappa Frans Malan som skördade de första druvorna 1952. Och idag är det andra och tredje generationen som styr det här. Det är Johan och hans bror och ett gäng ungar tror jag till dem. Och de har ju en otroligt stor och fin portfölj. De har röda viner, de har vita viner, det finns väl söta viner, det finns väl starkviner och liksom av alla de slag. Men idag så ska vi fokusera på de mousserande vinerna just för att det är den 1 september och det är International Cab Classic Day, eller hur? Och vad betyder det då?
Ja men exakt, det är väl själva dagen i sig är väl en dag att bara uppmärksamma Méthode Cab Classic som är den Sydafrikas svar på champagne, cava eller franciacorta. Så reglerna är egentligen att vinet måste det ska göras enligt den traditionella metoden och vinet ska spendera 9 månader på sin jästfällning. Det får vara vilka druvor som helst.
De flesta använder väl de klassiska champagnedruvorna?
De flesta gör det. Men man får också använda Chenin Blanc till exempel. Men från och med årgång 2021 så kommer lagstiftningen att ändras. Och då krävs det 12 månader på jästfällning istället. Och idag ska vi prova 2 stycken supergoda viner. Det är Capsevonkel 19 och Capsevonkel 13.
Capsevonkel 19 har ju precis kommit, det är den senaste årgången så den är ju rykande färsk. Och Capsevonkel 13 har vi ju också i lager och det är ju, tycker jag, otroligt roligt att få jämföra 2 årgångar.
Verkligen, superkul. Nu tycker jag att vi släpper in Johan här.
Ska vi se.
Hello Nikita, Nana.
Hi.
And hello to all the viewers out there.
Yeah, so nice to see you again. So, Johan, you're in the southern hemisphere and we're in the north one. So we're leaving the summer behind us, but you're soon or shortly entering the summer. But I heard that you had some snow just recently.
Yes, we're in the midst of quite a big cold front. We had lots of rain overnight and they're also predicting some snow on the mountains. Now that is something not very common here in Stellenbosch because we are, Mediterranean climate doesn't normally get this cold, but the snow will be on the higher lying mountains. So it's such a big thing, it actually gets into the newspapers, just to give you a bit of perspective.
Yeah, but it's also very, very beautiful when there's snow on the mountains. But Johan, please tell me, is there anything happening in the winery in regards to your bubblies right now?
Yes, we've just finished the making up all the blends of the different cuvées after the 2021 vintage. So that normally involves a lot of work and a lot of tastings and to finalize all the different cuvées for the Capsevonkel Brut, the Brut Rosé, Cuvée Royale and the 2 demi-sec wines. So that has been done and the process of bottling the wine has started. So that is on the one side. And secondly, we're also busy doing disgorging because in a few months, it will be a peak summer year and leading up to Christmas. So which means we have to be ready with a lot of bottles on cork. So it's never a dull moment.
Sounds like a lot of hard work right there.
But you know what, I'm thirsty and we have a lot to talk about. So I would recommend that everybody pours the wine at home so we can listen as Johan is talking. We have the 2019 in the first glass, and if you would like to prepare the 2013, you can put that in the in the second glass, so we can like taste what you are talking about, because that makes it a bit more interesting, I think.
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good idea. So, Johan, 2019 is a very special vintage for you. It's your 50th anniversary. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened when you decided to start making bubblies in the Cape?
Yes, the first vintage of Kaapse Vonkel was in 1971, and my father loved traveling, so he was visiting France and went to Champagne, and was intrigued by how they make champagne in France, and he thought, well, maybe he could try to do that in South Africa, because all the sparkling wines in South Africa were made with the carbonation method, not even the Charmat process. So he came back, and the first year he made a bottle fermented sparkling wine was in 1971. But because South Africa never had access to Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in those days, in the first few years, he used Chenin Blanc, almost like the Mousseux wines from the Loire Valley. But because he was the first, you know, it was a huge learning curve. So everything he had to find out himself, and it was definitely not easy. Well, I always admire his enthusiasm, and I actually thought it's something quite brave to do. And but more recently, in my time, I changed the blend to Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, as well as Kaapse Vonkel was also the first Cap Classique to include a bit of Pinot Meunier. So to include all three of the French varieties. So from a small beginning in 1971, Kaapse Vonkel has now developed to, you know, at a very youthful age of 50 years under the belt, but it's being enjoyed all over the world. So it's something truly remarkable story.
Do you have bottles of the 71 still in your cellar? Have you tasted it?
Yes, we have a few bottles, but by now, you know, I think most of the corks actually lose their elasticity. So the bottles are there more like museum pieces, and you know, it's good to look at and to have that memory. But I think all the sparkle escapes, and sometimes the corks don't seal as tight anymore. So unfortunately, don't have anything to taste that's 50 years old.
What's the story behind the name Kaapse Vonkel?
Yes, South Africa never used the French names like in some other New World countries like Champagne and Chablis. So when he started this Kaapse Vonkel, he had to find a name, and our home language is Afrikaans, which is derived from Dutch. And he had to find a name that he could use to distinguish it from the carbonated wine. So Kaapse Vonkel means Cape Sparkle, or Sparkle of the Cape.
It's a nice word. So Johan, we started tasting the 19 a little bit. Maybe would you like to go through the winemaking?
Yes, the harvest in Stellenbosch in South Africa is January, February, March, and the grapes we pick for Kaapse Vonkel is really at the very beginning of the vintage. So just after we get back from our Christmas and New Year vacation, within a week or so, we are in the midst of harvest. So it's a very rude awakening from the lazy days at the beach to working very long hours. So first would be Pinot Noir, and soon after that Chardonnay and Pinot Meunier, normally in between. And when we pick the grapes, everything is done by hand. So we have big teams of harvesters, and brought to the cellar in small bins. And then, unlike still wines, we do whole bunch pressing. So just like they do in Champagne, and that is to extract only the most gentle and softest cuvées from the skin without having too much maceration. And the juice is then separated in different fractions. So the very first part of that runs from the press is the cuvee, and then you start pressing a bit harder, and that's kept separate, and that's the Premier Taille, as the French say, vinified separately. So the first fermentation will be in tank with specialized yeasts, and that's your primary fermentation. So it normally takes about 3 weeks, and because we pick the grapes slightly, quite early to retain the freshness of the acidity, and not to have too much alcohol, because you have to go through a second fermentation in the bottle. So when the cuvee is finished fermentation, the alcohol would be about 10.8 to 11%. So that's exactly where we want it. And then after the harvest, we start tasting, we start doing the blending. I have to say that in the case of the Kaapse we finish fermentation. We don't do any malolactic fermentation, because we are in a warmer climate compared to Champagne. We want to retain all the natural acidity that the grapes bring into the cellar. So we keep it as clean as possible, and no malolactic. Some of the Chardonnay, I have to point out, is actually fermented in seasoned French oak barrels, because Chardonnay is the one that gives the elegance, the finesse, and they sometimes can be quite linear, you know, so almost a bit shy. So having a component in barrel helps to give it a bit more richness and depth of flavor. So that is the whole secret of the vinification, is actually that in the end you're working with 3 grape varieties, but you're also working with different vineyards. Every vineyard is vinified separately, and each one will have its own contribution, its own personality, and quality characteristics. So that is probably the part of the year where you really have to know and understand your vineyards, and to bring out the best quality in the final blend before the wine goes into the bottle.
You use the same vineyards each year for the Caps of Oncle, or do you decide?
Yeah, no, the vineyards will be the same ones, especially obviously for Pinot Noir. We don't make Pinot Noir as red wine, but in the Chardonnays, certain vineyards will go into the Caps of Oncle, and others will be made into still wine. And over time, you know, you get to understand the specific characteristics of each vineyard, and I think that is important to know which ones will do the best in the Caps of Oncle.
Great. So fermentation, part in stainless steel, and a smaller part of the Chardonnay in barrels. And then what happens then?
Once the tastings of the blends have been completed, the cuvee is ready, so it's prepared for bottling. And this in South Africa is the only legal situation where you are allowed to add sugar to wine. So our climate normally ensures that there's never a shortage of ripeness and sugar levels in the grapes. So, but in this case, the sugar is added to facilitate the second fermentation, or the prise de mousse, as the French say. So every 4 grams of sugar you add per liter delivers 1 bar of pressure. So if you want to end up in the final, in the wine with about 6 bar of pressure, you add 24 grams of sugar, and also special yeasts, a yeast culture that will give you the desired flavors and characteristics, but it must also be able to withstand the pressure. There's already some alcohol in the wine, and you want to make sure that your fermentation is completed in the bottle. Otherwise, it's maybe one of the worst nightmares a winemaker can have, making Cab Classique. You have an incomplete fermentation. So that is also added with the sugar in the tank, and then bottling takes place, and then the bottle is sealed with a little crown seal, almost like a beer top, but it seals very, very tightly, because you must remember during this second fermentation, the sugar is converted to alcohol by the yeast. So the alcohol will go up by about just over 1%. But the most important part is that the yeast makes the bubble. So carbon dioxide is formed, and that builds up in the bottle, gives the wine a natural sparkle, and that is the secret of the second fermentation in the bottle. The pressure increases up to 6 bar, and once all the sugar has been consumed, the yeast will become inactive, and it settles at the bottom of the bottle, lying on its side, obviously, and then a magic process starts, because the character of the second fermentation is often referred to as warm bread just coming out of the oven, or a yeasty characteristics. And because the yeast cells start to break open, it gives back different flavors, also components that influence the mouthfeel and the taste. And the longer you keep it on the yeast, the more those characters become more and more intense. So that is the vinification.
Right. And how long did you let the 2019?
The 2019 spent 19 months on the yeast in the bottle before it was riddled and disgorged. So I say normally we are between 15 months, sometimes 19, 20 months or so. It depends sometimes about the time of the year, because towards the end of the year, most of the Cap Classique sells around about Christmas and New Year time. But we would love to have everything at the 15 months and above.
Right. So that's basically almost more than double the amount of time needed by law, right? Because that's 9 months.
Yes, yes. The legal minimum was 9 months, but the regulations changed after a lot of research is done. And from this year on, the requirement will be 12 months. And hopefully in the long run, it will move up to 15, but that might take a few years. So I think that's a big contributor to quality.
So I've been trying this wine. It's 50% Chardonnay, 49% Pinot Noir, and 1% Pinot Meunier in the 19, as I've understood. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time in a long time that I've tried the 2019. It's been a couple of months, and I always get so struck by the freshness, the acidity, and the complexity. You have all those flavors of like grilled lemon, and you have a bit of red apples, and almost I like the freshness is so intriguing. And we actually had this on a blind tasting with a couple of guests not a long time ago, with actually a couple of real champagnes, and they all picked this one as their favorite in a blind tasting, and I can certainly see why. Nikita, what are you feeling in the glass?
No, for me, it's a lot again, the grilled citrus and the stuff like that, but it's also a lot about the breadiness. I find a lot of biscuits. And then when coming to the mouthfeel, I definitely agree with you that it has that super beautiful acidity, that freshness, but it also has a super great creaminess that just makes it feel round, but not too big, not flabby. It's just very lean and very drinkable. And also the bubbles are also very much adding to both the feeling of the creaminess, but also the freshness.
It's really small and elegant bubbles.
Yeah, they are very beautiful.
And the sugar level is 4.1 grams of sugar per liter, right? So which is very dry.
Yes. If there's one thing that in the past 10 years or so, definitely the Kaapse has definitely become more brut than it used to be. And I think the one thing what we find is that the higher the dose of sugar, the more it sort of covers up the fruitiness. So, but we always thought the consumer loves a little bit of sweetness. And so gradually over a period of time, we decreased the dosage levels, and the sugar levels came down, and it allows more of the fruit to come out. And it gives the wine that a little bit of muscle and almost like a nervousness, which I think is really beautiful. There's a bit of tension running through the wine, which I think is really nice.
Right. And now this is so dry, you would be you would be allowed to put extra brut on the label.
Yes, technically we would, but I think it could vary. The sugar next year might be just over 5, and maybe extra brut would almost put some people off. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
so,
I agree.
I'm also impressed rounding up the 2019. I'm so impressed by the length of the wine, because it's been a couple of minutes since I had it in the mouth and it's still evolving, which is for me is like the biggest sign of quality, almost like the length of the flavor. So it's super impressive.
Yeah, the one thing that we're looking for obviously is to have harmony and balance in those. So you have alcohol, acidity, and fruit, and the sugar is almost the one that rounds off everything. So a little bit of sugar is what brings back the balance, not too much. And I agree with you, Anna, that the length is what we refer to as the structure of the wine, and that runs throughout the whole length of the wine, from the palate entry to the aftertaste. And we have a saying in the cellar is that the acidity can be high because we picked the Pinot and Chardonnay and so early. For us, acidity is similar to what I've experienced they get in Champagne. But we always say the acidity should roll off your tongue. So, and that it's a high acidity, but it doesn't stick to your mouth. It's a soft acidity.
Yeah. I'm actually really curious to compare these two wines now. So I'm going to start tasting the 2013. Could you please tell us about the differences between the wines, maybe the winemaking, or if it differs, or actually also about the vintage difference? Is there a big difference in vintages in the South Africa? Because I know it is in Champagne.
2019 was like the first vintage after we had this incredible 3-year drought that culminated with the 2018 vintage, when we really thought even the city of Cape Town will run out of water, which is would have been so we were all told to use only 50 liters of water per day, but we managed to survive. Then after 18, that winter was a good winter. We had sufficient rain. So 19 didn't have the stress and strain of the shortage of water. It started quite early, and it was a good vintage. No difficulty, very healthy, no problems with mildew and rot. If you go to 2013, it was a rather wet summer. So we had rain during the growing season, and once we got to the harvest, it was a moist type of harvest. And then you always have to be very careful that you have to select healthy grapes in the vineyard. And if you look at the blend, it's 63% Pinot Noir and 37% Chardonnay. There's no Pinot Meunier, because the Pinot Meunier just got affected by the weather, and it was not up to standard, so it wasn't included in the blend at all. So, but with that, if you have these little bits of rain from time to time, it also helps to cool things down. So I rate 2013 as a cool vintage, and we always, because cooler vintages sort of stand out, and it normally benefits the white wines as well as the Cap Classique. So the 13 is definitely a cooler vintage, and I think that's partly why the wine has matured so well for 8 years.
Sure. And the sugar level is a bit higher in this one. I've written down 6.8 grams sugar per liter.
That's right. Yes. That was sort of in the process of moving towards lower dosage levels and slightly higher in residual. You'll see it's a few grams, but one thing we spend a lot of time on when we do a new vintage is before it comes on the market or we start disgorging, we do extensive trials, and sometimes the difference would be 1 milliliter of dosage, and then whether it will be 6 milliliters or 7 will raise a huge discussion amongst me and Charles Kuman, the winemaker, and my son Michael, which one, because sometimes it's like a knife's edge, 6 will be leaning towards the dry and 7 will be, it sounds almost silly that 1 milliliter on a 750 ml bottle can make such a difference. But you're working with a wine that is very delicate. And I find that fascinating when we make that decision.
Right. What's the difference on time on lease for these two? It was about 18 months for the 2019 and the 13.
Yes, the 2013 was on the yeast for 19 months and then kept in the cellar on cork for 72 months. So that's 6 years on cork. And it's interesting that I started keeping back some of the every vintage just to see how the wine matures. But in that case, it will be on the yeast, on the lees. So we'll riddle the bottles and then keep them upside down, or sur point, as the French term is, because then it sort of slows down the development even more. And then if you disgorge a 2013 now and put it next to the one that spent so much time on cork, the character and the development of the wines are totally different. But for me, the richness and the complexity, almost that roasted almond characters that you find in the 2013 is really delicious. There's just so much going on. It's got complexity and so different from the 2019 again.
For sure. You can almost, just by looking at them, you can see it's much more golden, the 2013, whereas the first one is more like a squeezed lemon or something like that.
Yeah. For me, the 2013 is drinking absolutely beautiful. You've got, or I find a lot of, as you say, roasted almonds. I think that's a very, very nice reference for this wine. But also it's going more towards the brioche. It has the little bit more mature, but it's absolutely in its prime, I would say, at this point. It also has that very nice creaminess, the nice acidity that definitely leaves you wanting one more sip. And the bubbles are like on its way to maturation, but they're still there. They're very present. It's, for me, it's drinking absolutely beautiful. But Johan, Anna, maybe you want to...
I totally agree with you. I just wanted to say, if I were to serve this, which I am, because I have a couple of bottles of this at home, I usually serve them actually in a bigger Pinot Noir kind of glass, just to really showcase the muscle and the aroma.
I brought the glass, so it's a good topic to talk to your viewers. Is that the modern trend is definitely to use bigger glasses for Cap Classique, and it allows more flavors to come out, especially with something like this 2013 that has more development, more richness, more advanced flavors. So I still believe that the flute is, for me, a glass that's almost about the functionality. If you're at a party or a function, for me, it's beautiful to watch the bubbles rising to the surface. We always talk about a string of pearls, but when you're tasting to evaluate the wine, almost maybe in a tasting panel, maybe the bigger glass will reveal more. But so there's a place for each one of them.
For sure. Absolutely. So, Johan, I wanted to ask, obviously you have quite a lot of vintages behind you. and that comes with a lot of knowledge, is the word I'm looking for. The 19 being quite different to the 13 in terms of dosage and grape varieties. How do you think the 19 will develop forwards? Can we, in 8 years, drink a bottle of 19 and it's as beautiful as 13, or can we expect even more?
I think looking at the 19 now and also looking at the blend, it contains 50% of Chardonnay, and Chardonnay is the variety in the cuvée that is the slowest to develop. So normally they say Pinot Meunier reaches its peak within 2-3 years or so. So that carries the wine in the early parts of its life. Secondly, Pinot Noir, 3, 4, 5 years is when it will be at its full development. And then Chardonnay is the one that only almost sleeps for the first 4 or 5 years, and then from 5, 6, 7 years is when it blossoms. So with a slightly higher percentage of Chardonnay in the 2019, I think it has the potential to mature and to develop very nicely. And maybe with the 13, that's quite rich at this stage. The 19 might take longer to get to this level of richness. So it's exciting to see that if you take some of the 19 and put it away for 6 years or so, you're going to end up with something really nice, similar to the 13, but I think it might even be a little bit tighter. Another tip that I you never stop learning in this game, and one thing that I learned is that if you want to keep Cap Classique in your cellar for a number of years, keep them upright. Don't lie them on their side, because that is, if the cork stays dry and upright, it will stay dry, and it doesn't lose its elasticity. So the seal will be better, and when you take it out after 5 or 6 years, it will still have that mushroom shape.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, because that's different from like still wines, I'd say.
Yes,
that's a good tip. And like food-wise, for these two wines, it's interesting because they are so different. We usually like talk about the wines afterwards and what we will pair them to. But for me, both two wines could actually be served in the same dinner, but to different courses. Because the first one really screamed for like oysters and fish and seafood in my book. And also this is such a lovely appetizer. That's how I usually serve it. And well, I can drink this for the entire dinner because of the freshness. But the second wine, with all its structure and a bit more complexity and the nutty aromas, you could actually go for the main course with this one. And then I would like maybe do a bit of fish, maybe bake it in the oven or grill it on the grill if it's summer still, which it's not in Sweden at the moment. And I will use a lot of hazelnuts and a bit of butter and like really bring out the aromas. That's what I probably would do.
They would be super lovely to that. And I would also love to have the 13 maybe with some chanterelles.
Oh, yes.
Where I think it would come out really, really nice.
Sure.
In any kind of dish. Maybe not a super heavy meat dish, but a risotto or pasta or whatever. You can go.
Because the acidity would really break through like the fattiness of the risotto.
Yeah.
How do you pair this one? Is there any classic South African dishes that maybe we could cook and serve this with?
Well, we all know fresh oysters with a clean, youthful wine like the 2019 always makes a really good pairing. But maybe something that's more summery, I think just like a smoked chicken salad and so on. So some more al fresco type food. And we do a lot of our cooking and catering and entertainment outside in summer on a South African braai, but to have a lamb cutlets or steak with this, it's a bit heavy. But so when you have a midsummer and it's nice and warm, the 2019 is so crisp and refreshing. I think it's as good as an aperitif on its own, but you can also do what you said, seafood like oysters and something that's light and not too rich. But when you get to the 2013, I think the richness of the wine, but still with that acidity that can handle maybe more butter or a creaminess in the dish. There you can talk about game birds, or you can talk about something like a chicken or even seafood with a more of a butter or a creamy sauce. These wines tend to have it keeps the richness of the dish in balance because of that fresh acidity. But I'm not a chef, so I'm a little bit on thin ice here.
When you said oysters, not when Anna said it, but Johan, when you said it with your South African accent, I got this really crazy. It was so long time ago I was there, and I used to travel to South Africa quite a lot, and I always, if I had the night off, I'd always start the evening by going to the Warenmarkt.
Yes.
And, 5 to 10 oysters and 1 or maybe 2 glasses of Kapsevonkel.
Yeah, I must say the west coast of South Africa is the Atlantic Ocean, so it's very cold, and this is where they grow a lot of the cultured oysters. And I always think compared to what they're up there with the best. But on the south coast, along the Garden Route, you get to Still Bay, and from that side, I'm a keen fisherman, but my father actually taught us to take out wild oysters from the sea, and now that is something incredible. But not really for sale, actually, because you have to go and fish your own.
Right. Fair enough.
So we are, I think, right on time.
I think we're super good on time.
But we got one question that I thought was so good from one of our viewers that we really need to ask you. What is your favorite time as a winemaker in the vineyard or in the winery?
I think the harvest is almost like the highlight of the winemaker's year, because the excitement of the new vintage coming in, every day is you start fresh. You don't really know what is lying ahead. You know what you're going to pick, but how the grapes will be and how the wines will turn out. You actually see the grapes coming in, the juice going into fermentation, and within 3 days it's already looking different. And when fermentation is complete, it's almost like a creation that has taken place, and the young wine is there, and that excitement that you feel when you realize this is going to be good. Yeah. That is the ultimate satisfaction. And you walk through the cellar and all these fermenting tanks, there's this perfume of fruitiness and aromas hanging in the air. And I always tell other winemakers that your children, just let them smell. Let them get the smell, and they will all follow in your footsteps. I think, and so that is a highlight that you always look forward to. It's hard work, but when you do the hard work, you always get the rewards afterwards.
It's very apparent that this is very, very true for you, Johan, because you light up like a child.
Yeah, for sure. I actually was in South Africa during harvest time. I almost lost my finger. I have a deep scar going this way and that way from the very sharp scissors.
Yes.
But it's a fond memory, so I can understand what you're talking about. But I'm not harvest material, obviously. I was sad, but it was great fun.
Well, you've got a good story to tell.
For sure.
Of course.
So we are almost running out of time. This was such a lovely talk, and it was such a big pleasure that you were willing to spend International Cap Classique Day with us. We will soon see all of the followers on or viewers on Instagram, where we will pick a few winners. I think 10 will win a Simon-Sich stopper, which you can put in a Kapsevonkel if you, for some weird reason, don't finish your bottle. So we will have 10 lucky winners on Instagram stories right after this. And
yeah, there's nothing more to say. If you take pictures, please tag Tryffelsvinet. We always like to see you after you've seen us. And thank you very, very much to Johan for describing how the wine is made, the differences between the vintages and everything. They're drinking super beautiful. Thank you so much.
And if you ever go to South Africa, which I really recommend, I also recommend going to Simon-Sich, of course.
You're always welcome. Let's hope life gets back to normal and you come and join us in South Africa. But have a wonderful Cap Classique Day on the 1st of September. You know, it's a momentous year with 50 years of Cap Classique in South Africa, and all the growers, all the winemakers are extremely excited because they are, you know, where we were the first in 71, there are now more than almost 250 winemakers doing this style of wine, and it is one of the most exciting categories in South Africa. So as we say in Afrikaans, gezondheid.
Gezondheid.
Cheers. Yes.
Skål. Tack så hemskt mycket.
Skål. Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.